What happened when an undercover CEO walked into his own wellness retreat and discovered that healing had been replaced with humiliation? Hello, wonderful listeners. You're the kind of people who believe leadership is more than a title and kindness is more than a slogan. In today's powerful story, we follow Dr. Adrian Wells, a CEO who disguises himself as a guest to uncover the truth behind recent complaints. What he finds is deeply unsettling and sparks a transformation that changes everything. This isn't just about business, it's about rebuilding trust, one human moment at a time. Stay with us, you won't want to miss this. Dr. Adrian Wells sat in his private office, a glass wall framing the sun-drenched desert beyond, but his eyes were locked on the screen in front of him. Guest feedback from Serenity Haven's Desert Bloom location had just come in. Most reviews were glowing, filled with praise for the tranquil surroundings and wellness programs, but a handful of comments stood out like thorns in the bouquet. Staff seemed cold, one read. Felt judged the entire time, another said. And then, this place is supposed to be healing, but I left feeling worse than when I arrived. Adrian's stomach twisted. This was the opposite of what Serenity Haven stood for. He had built this retreat chain from the ground up, places where people came to feel safe, to reconnect with themselves. His late wife had inspired the mission after battling a long illness. Kindness had been the cornerstone of everything. To hear that guests felt belittled or dismissed, especially in Sedona, the flagship location, was not just disappointing, it was personal. He had visited Desert Bloom before, but always announced. Every time the staff had been warm, the service seamless. But now he wondered, had they just been performing for the boss? He didn't want curated tours or polished smiles anymore. He needed the truth. That evening, he packed a simple duffel bag, shaved off his signature beard, and dusted off an old pair of yoga sneakers. The next morning, he booked himself in under the name Adam Blake, a first-time visitor looking for clarity and rest. No fanfare, no VIP perks, just a guest blending in with everyone else. If there was a rot beneath the surface, he would find it, not from behind a desk, but from the heart of the experience itself. He owed that much to his guests, and to the soul of the retreat he once built with love. Adrian arrived at Serenity Haven's Desert Bloom Center just after noon, stepping out of a ride-share car with nothing but a duffel bag, a yoga mat, and the name Adam Blake tucked into the reservation system. Gone were the tailored button-downs and polished leather shoes. Today he wore worn sneakers, athletic joggers, and a hoodie pulled low over his freshly trimmed hair. Thick-rimmed glasses, non-prescription, completed the look. The receptionist barely looked up as he checked in, her tone polite but impersonal. Adrian took mental notes with each interaction. The spa-like ambiance was as pristine as ever. White walls, soft acoustic music, the scent of lavender in the air. But it was the people, not the environment, he'd come to observe. He made his way to the juice therapy lounge, where he stood quietly in line behind a middle-aged woman in activewear, flipping through the detox menu. "I'll take the gut reset smoothie, please," she said with a hopeful smile. The employee behind the counter, Liam, according to his name badge, tapped at the screen with a bored expression. As soon as she stepped aside, he leaned toward his coworker Sierra and muttered just loudly enough for Adrian to hear, "Yeah, that's gonna fix 20 years of drive-through breakfasts." Sierra snorted without missing a beat. "She should order a miracle shot while she's at it." The woman stood by the counter, blissfully unaware, scrolling her phone while they continued to smirk. Adrian felt a slow, bitter heat rise in his chest. This wasn't harmless sarcasm, it was quiet cruelty, practiced and unchallenged. When the woman received her drink and thanked them, neither barista responded. As she left, Sierra whispered, "And there goes another one. Emotional baggage in a blender." Adrian stepped up next, masking his reaction. "I'll have the same, please," he said calmly. Liam barely glanced up. $7.50. The transaction was quick, dismissive. Adrian took the drink and moved aside, pretending to sip, but inside, his resolve sharpened. If this was how they behaved with a stranger, what else was going unnoticed? He hadn't expected to find answers this quickly, but he had, and he wasn't going anywhere. Over the next 2 days, Adrian fell into the rhythm of the retreat. Morning meditation, journaling sessions, nutrition workshops, and afternoon wellness lectures. But beneath the soothing schedule, he kept seeing cracks in the facade. The same staff members who greeted guests with gentle words often let their masks slip the moment backs were turned. During a guided breathwork session, a young man in his 20s visibly struggled to stay composed. His hands shook as he followed the instructor's cues, clearly fighting off anxiety. When the session ended, Adrian overheard Liam mutter to Sierra, "Betty hyperventilates just picking a Netflix show." Sierra laughed, too loud for the room they were in. In another workshop, an older guest asked a genuine question about detox timelines, only to be met with a thinly veiled eye roll from the facilitator. These weren't isolated incidents. Adrian noticed a subtle code among some staff, condescension cloaked in wellness jargon, and a deep disdain for anyone who didn't fit the image of the retreat's curated clientele. The more vulnerable a guest appeared, whether due to body size, emotional openness, or visible discomfort, the more likely they were to become the butt of whispered jokes. But not everyone was part of the act. One staff member caught Adrian's attention. Noah, a junior mindfulness coach in his mid-20s. Noah was soft-spoken, patient, and genuinely attentive to guests. He helped an elderly woman adjust her yoga mat without making her feel helpless, and stayed late after a meditation session to talk with a tearful mother grieving her son. Yet, Adrian also noticed that Noah seemed to shrink when around Liam or Sierra, choosing silence over eye contact, blending into the background. In the employee hallway one evening, Adrian caught a glimpse of a staff whiteboard marked Team Vibes, meant to celebrate positive energy. Only a few names were highlighted, Liam and Sierra among them. Noah's name was absent. Something in Adrian's chest tightened. This wasn't just a behavior issue, it was a culture problem, one where ridicule was normalized and empathy went unrewarded. If he hadn't come here himself, he never would have believed it. But now, seeing the full scope, he realized the retreat wasn't failing because of poor systems or outdated programs. It was being quietly eroded by a lack of respect, accountability, and courage. The question now was how deep this went, and how far he'd have to go to fix it. The following morning, during a quiet group nature walk along one of the center's desert trails, Adrian found himself paired naturally beside Noah. The others chatted in pairs or walked alone, absorbed in the tranquility, but Noah walked with his hands loosely in his pockets, his eyes flicking to the ground as if weighed by more than just the heat. Sensing the moment, Adrian broke the silence. "You seem different from the others," he said. Noah glanced sideways. "Different how?" "You listen," Adrian replied simply. Noah gave a half smile, the kind that acknowledged truth without embracing it. They walked in silence a few more steps before Noah said quietly, "It doesn't count for much around here." Adrian asked what he meant. Noah exhaled. Liam and Sierra run the tone behind the scenes. They laugh at guests, gossip about coworkers, and somehow they're still the ones getting praised. If you try to push back, they shut you out. If you show compassion, they call you soft. He looked down. "I came here because I believed in what this place was supposed to be. But lately, I feel like I'm the only one who still cares." Adrian felt the words settle heavily in his chest. "Have you ever reported it?" he asked. Noah nodded. "Once, months ago, nothing happened. Travis, the site manager, said he'd look into it. Then my hours dropped for a while. Message received." The bitterness in his tone wasn't loud, but it was sharp. They stopped at a shaded overlook, the red cliffs stretching in the distance. "Have you ever thought about leaving?" Adrian asked. Noah hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Yeah, but part of me keeps hoping it'll change, that someone will finally notice." Adrian placed a hand on his shoulder. "What if someone just did?" Noah looked up, puzzled, but Adrian only smiled faintly and said, "Thanks for telling me. I'm glad you did." As they rejoined the group, Adrian's mind was already working. Liam and Sierra were symptoms, but Travis, the manager who allowed it all to happen, was the root. And if change was coming, it wouldn't be quiet for much longer. The breaking point came during what was supposed to be one of the retreat's signature experiences, a live smoothie demonstration in the main atrium, where guests gathered to learn about nutrition and sample custom blends. Adrian stood near the back of the group, blending in among the dozen attendees. Liam was at the blender station, microphone clipped to his collar, performing for the crowd. His tone was polished, but his smirk hadn't softened. Sierra worked beside him, prepping ingredients. A nervous teenage girl, no older than 16, raised her hand and asked timidly, do you have anything with peanut butter that helps with energy? Liam's polite smile barely covered the exaggerated sigh he let slip. It's literally on the menu, he said, pointing to the board with theatrical flair. A few uncomfortable chuckles echoed from the crowd. The girl flushed and stared at the floor. Sierra leaned over to Liam, whispering into the mic she thought was off. Someone didn't read the basics. Liam snorted, forgetting entirely that they were still live. Adrian saw it happen in real time, the shift in the room. The girl looked as if she might cry. A few guests exchanged glances. Even the front desk associate, watching from a corner, looked uneasy. That was it. Adrian stepped forward, slow but deliberate. "Excuse me," he said, setting down his untouched drink from earlier. Liam didn't even look up. "Samples are coming," he said. "No," Adrian said firmly. "I've lost my appetite." Liam finally turned. "Okay?" "Not my—" "I think it is your problem," Adrian interrupted, and reached up to remove his glasses and hoodie. As soon as his face was visible, Sierra went pale. Liam froze. "Wait. You're Dr. Adrian Wells," he confirmed, "founder of this retreat, and I just watched you humiliate a guest who trusted us to help her feel better." And the atrium went silent. Sierra stammered something about joking, but Adrian raised a hand. "You weren't joking, and even if you were, this is not a place where laughter comes at someone else's expense." He turned to the rest of the stunned group. "This retreat was built on healing. What you just saw? That's the opposite of who we are." Then he looked back at Liam and Sierra. "You're both done for the day, and depending on what I find out next, that might be permanent." They didn't argue. They couldn't. The mask had cracked, and everyone saw what was underneath. Adrian escorted Liam and Sierra into the staff lounge himself. Neither said a word as they passed through the hallway, heads lowered, energy deflated. Once inside, he closed the door behind them. "You're officially suspended," he said calmly. "Pending a full review of your conduct and guest feedback, you may collect your belongings and leave the property." Sierra opened her mouth, maybe to defend herself, but the look on Adrian's face silenced her before a word left her lip. Liam simply nodded once, then turned to the lockers. When they were gone, Adrian took a deep breath and called an impromptu staff meeting. A few employees looked wary as they entered the atrium, especially those who had witnessed what had just happened. Elena, the senior wellness coordinator, stood near the back, arms crossed, not out of defiance, but caution. Adrian noticed her. He always had. She'd been with Serenity Haven for years, consistent and capable, yet often overlooked by louder voices like Travis's. "I know this wasn't how you expected today to go," Adrian began, "but it's time we talk about what's really been happening here." He explained what he had witnessed, not just today, but over the past week under the name Adam Blake. Whispers broke out across the group. "I spoke with some of you," he continued, "and what I heard was clear. There's a pattern of disrespect, cruelty, and silence, and it hasn't been addressed because the people in charge either refused to act or didn't care enough to try." He turned his gaze to Elena. "Can you tell me, honestly, if this is something you've reported?" Elena hesitated, then slowly nodded, more than once, but Travis said it wasn't worth making drama over, that guests are too sensitive. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Where is Travis now?" "His shift starts at 4, she replied. "Good," Adrian said. "I'll wait, because this doesn't stop with 2 rude employees. It stops when leadership takes responsibility." The room was quiet, but something shifted. Eyes that had previously held doubt now held hope. And as Adrian looked around, he knew the moment of reckoning had finally come, not just for Liam and Sierra, but for the culture that allowed them to thrive unchecked. At exactly 4 p.m., Travis Langford strolled into the retreat with a latte in hand and sunglasses still on, exuding the unbothered confidence of someone who'd never been challenged. Adrian waited just inside the staff entrance, arms crossed. As Travis walked past him toward the back office, Adrian spoke. "Travis?" The manager paused mid-step, turning slowly. His eyes widened the moment he registered who was standing before him. "Dr. Wells," he said, almost dropping his coffee, I didn't know you were visiting today." I didn't announce it, Adrian replied flatly. We need to talk. Now. Travis followed him into the lounge, trying to mask his unease. Look, if this is about scheduling, it's about leadership, Adrian cut in. Or the lack of it. Adrian laid it all out. Liam and Sierra's mockery of guests, Noah's dropped hours after reporting problems, Elena's ignored complaints, and the toxic atmosphere that had gone unchallenged under his watch. Travis tried to dodge responsibility. You know how staff dynamics can get. Some personalities clash. It's not like guests ever directly complained to me. They didn't have to, Adrian replied, voice cool. They complained to the front desk, to coordinators, and more importantly, they were mocked by your staff while you looked the other way. Travis scoffed. You expect every employee to be perfect? We meet all our monthly targets, the guests come back, the retreat runs on time. But not on trust, Adrian said sharply. You let cruelty slide for the sake of convenience. That's not management, it's neglect. Travis's jaw tightened. So what now? You're blaming me for their behavior? I'm holding you accountable for enabling it, Adrian said. You ignored red flags, punished the people who spoke up, and let good staff be pushed aside. That ends now. You can't seriously be thinking of. You're dismissed, Adrian said firmly, effective immediately. Travis stood frozen for a moment, stunned, then scoffed bitterly. Unbelievable. But he didn't argue further. He gathered his things, gave Elena a pointed glare, and walked out. The moment the door closed behind him, a heavy silence lifted, a few employees exchanged glances. Elena looked up, a flicker of relief crossing her face. Adrian turned to her. You've been holding this place together. It's time you were given the authority to do it right. Elena blinked. You mean? I want you to lead this site, he said officially. For the first time that day she smiled. And it wasn't out of obligation. It was earned. By the following morning, the Desert Bloom Center already felt different. The air wasn't just quieter, it was lighter. With Elena now stepping in as interim site director, Adrian gathered the entire staff in the meditation room for a meeting, this time not as a secret guest, but as the founder reclaiming his vision. The team sat cross-legged or leaned against walls, unsure of what to expect. Adrian began without preamble. This retreat was never meant to be a place where people feel judged. It was created as a sanctuary for healing, for safety, and for compassion. And somewhere along the line we lost that. He spoke plainly, without corporate language, outlining the changes that would take effect immediately. First, a new zero-tolerance policy on guest shaming and staff bullying. Second, the launch of a confidential reporting system where employees could safely speak up about issues without fear of retaliation. Third, mandatory empathy and de-escalation training, led in part by Noah, who would also take on a new mentorship role within the center. Adrian turned to him during the announcement. You saw what was happening and still chose to care. That's the kind of leadership we need. Noah blinked, stunned, and nodded slowly, emotion brimming behind his usual calm. Elena then addressed the group, her voice steady. I've been here long enough to see the best of what this retreat can be. We're going to rebuild this place together, not with pressure, but with purpose. That means listening more, helping each other, and remembering why we're here. Staff members who had been silent now leaned in. There were nods, a few tentative smiles. Even those who had kept their distance seemed relieved by the clarity. Adrian handed out printed wellness commitments, simple values like respect everyone, lead with empathy, hold space for growth, and asked each team member to sign it, not as a contract, but as a promise. As the meeting wrapped up, Adrian stepped aside with Elena. This place needs healing, he said, and not just for the guests. She nodded. We've all felt it, but now we have to change it. Outside, the sun rose over the red cliffs, casting warm light through the glass walls. It wasn't just a new day, it was a new beginning. And for the first time in far too long, Adrian believed that the heart of Serenity Haven might finally beat the way it was always meant to. 2 weeks later, Dr. Adrian Wells returned to the Desert Bloom Center not undercover, not for inspection, but simply to observe. This time, he walked the grounds without disguise, a warm cup of herbal tea in hand, letting the atmosphere speak for itself. And it did. The change wasn't dramatic or theatrical, it was quiet, organic, and unmistakable. He noticed it in the way the front desk staff greeted guests with genuine warmth, in the way new visitors lingered longer in the gardens, and especially in the way the staff interacted with one another. Easy smiles, shared laughter, no undercurrents of fear. At the juice bar, a young guest stood in line, scanning the menu nervously. Noah, now in a crisp staff polo with a new badge reading Staff Mentor, stepped forward with a friendly smile. "Looking for something energizing or calming?" he asked gently. The girl's shoulders relaxed. "Energizing, I think." He nodded. "Let's make something together." Adrienne watched from afar, his chest tightening, but this time with pride. Nearby, Elena stood by the community board, posting a new schedule for upcoming team-led mindfulness circles and guest-led story nights. When she spotted Adrian, she walked over. "We've started something," she said, handing him a copy of the new team values document. He skimmed it. "Compassion is our currency. Dignity is our default. Presence is our promise." He smiled. "You didn't just restore the heart of this place," he said. "You helped it evolve." Later that afternoon, a familiar face entered the retreat. A woman in her mid-30s, the same guest who had once walked away with her smoothie and unknowingly been mocked. Adrian approached her with care. "Welcome back," he said. Recognition sparked in her eyes. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But something told me to give it another shot." "You made the right choice," Adrian replied softly, "and I promise, this time you'll be seen for who you are, not judged for who you aren't." She smiled, then glanced around the room. "It already feels different." As the sun dipped behind the desert horizon, Adrian stood by the windows, watching a group of staff and guests gather in the courtyard for a laughter yoga session. The sounds that filled the air were real this time, not forced, not masked, but genuine. For the first time in a long while, the retreat truly lived up to its name. Serenity hadn't just been restored, it had been redefined. The story of Dr. Adrian Wells and the Desert Bloom Retreat reminds us that healing spaces must begin with those who serve them. No matter how serene the environment or polished the mission statement, a culture lacking empathy will always erode from within. Adrian's decision to step out of his role as founder and into the shoes of a guest revealed the truth that leadership often misses. Cruelty doesn't always scream. It whispers in jokes, shrugs, and silence. The most dangerous behavior isn't loud disrespect, but tolerated indifference. Real leadership means doing more than issuing policies. It means listening, showing up, and acting when others won't. It means choosing kindness over convenience and integrity over image. By removing toxic influences, uplifting compassionate employees, and holding management accountable, Adrian didn't just fix a broken system, he reignited a vision. The greatest lesson? Healing isn't just for the guests. It's for the staff who give, the leaders who listen, and the culture they build together. Compassion isn't a luxury, it's a responsibility. And when that responsibility is met with courage and action, even a fractured space can become a sanctuary again. One where everyone, not just the paying clients, feels safe, respected, and truly seen.